All right, welcome back everyone to Vuln Vibes. We're diving back in for another deep dive. You know how we do it here. And today, we're going to be looking at something that I think a lot of you are going to find really interesting. Zoom. Yeah, Zoom. They had to patch a whole bunch of vulnerabilities, like a lot of vulnerabilities across their workplace apps, their SDKs, and we're talking a wide range of severity here
Yeah.
impacting different platforms. I know you guys, our listeners, are all security pros, so we don't need to spend time on the basics. But what we're going to do instead is we're going to dissect this. We're going to look at the trends. What are these vulnerabilities telling us?
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? I mean, Zoom, I think its popularity makes it a huge target. And the sheer variety of vulnerabilities they've had to patch, it really does give us a little window, a window into what kind of attacks are trending right now.
Exactly. And I think one of the ones that really kind of jumps out at me right off the bat is CVE 2025-27440. This is a heap overflow, and it allows authenticated users to escalate privileges. So, I
Yeah.
mean, we're talking insider threats here. Someone who
Yeah.
already has legitimate access decides, hey, I'm going to go rogue. And you think about a platform like Zoom where so much sensitive information is being shared. I mean, it's kind of a worst case scenario, really.
Well, absolutely. And heap overflows, I mean, they're just this constant problem, like a recurring nightmare in software development. I always think of it like this. Your application, its memory, it's like a really neatly organized bookshelf. And each book, that's a piece of data. And a heap overflow, well, that's like someone comes along and just shoves, like, I don't know, this massive encyclopedia right onto that shelf. All the other books, they get knocked off, they're damaged, rearranged, maybe even fall on the floor.
Yeah, makes sense. So are you saying in this case the attacker is injecting like malicious code?
Right. It's that malicious code that's like the big encyclopedia and it messes everything up. It can give the attacker control. They can access data they shouldn't.
Oh, wow. Okay, so thinking about Zoom specifically, what could someone actually do with this vulnerability? Like, paint me a picture.
All right, well, imagine this. You've got an employee who is really unhappy with their company. Maybe they're about to get fired, who knows? But they decide they want to do some damage. With this exploit, they could potentially get into all the recordings, of all these confidential meetings, steal all kinds of secrets, maybe even manipulate the settings to just completely disrupt the whole company. They could even take over the accounts of some big executive.
Hmm.
It's really a reminder that even if you've got great security, at your perimeter, you always have to watch out for those threats from the inside.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It is scary how one little vulnerability can open up so many possibilities for an attacker. But, okay, get this. Zoom also patched CVE 2025-27439, also a high-severity vulnerability. This one, though, is a buffer underflow. So you've got two completely different root causes, right? But both of them are rated as high severity. Oh, it kind of makes me wonder, is this like a pattern? Is there something, I don't know, maybe systemic with how Zoom develops their software?
Yeah, I mean, when you see multiple vulnerabilities that are that serious, and especially when they're caused by totally different things, it does make you question their security practices. Of course, all software is going to have some vulnerabilities, but too, with this kind of impact, it suggests there might be some problems with their coding practices. Maybe their code review process isn't thorough enough. It really points to the need for them to do a really comprehensive security audit, really get in there and be proactive about finding and fixing these vulnerabilities before they become a problem.
Right. Okay. So it's not just patching the holes. It's figuring out why the holes are there in the first place. So there's another vulnerability I want to touch on. CVE 2025-0151. This one's a use after free vulnerability. And I know this can lead to all sorts of bad stuff. But how does this one specifically work in Zoom? Like, what would the actual impact be?
So use after free vulnerabilities, they happen when a program, it tries to access memory that's already been, freed up. It leads to all kinds of unpredictable things happening. With Zoom, an attacker might be able to use this to crash the whole application,
Right.
denial of service attack. Or if they were really clever, they might even be able to use it to, take control of the whole application's processes. That could lead to data theft, or even let them run some other malicious code.
And to add to all of that, there's also CVE 2025-0150. And this one's specific to iOS, but it's another denial of service vulnerability. Seems like attackers are coming at these platforms from all sides.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, what we're seeing is that these attacks are getting more and more sophisticated, and they're going after those platforms that we all rely on, for communicating and collaborating. And the fact that these vulnerabilities, they're affecting different operating systems, and they're using different weaknesses, it just shows how complicated it is to try to secure these
Yeah,
platforms.
for sure. And with all these high-severity vulnerabilities, it's easy to forget about the ones that seem less serious, like CVE 2025-0149. This one is denial of service, but it's only rated as medium severity. So why should our listeners who are already dealing with all these big threats, why should they even care about this one?
Because even vulnerabilities that seem small, they can be used, like dominoes to create bigger problems. Attackers often use them as stepping stones. Think about it. A denial of service attack, it could completely overwhelm Zoom's servers.
Yeah.
That would disrupt, all kinds of important business operations. Force employees to use less secure ways to communicate, maybe even create an opportunity for a more serious attack while everyone's distracted. You should never underestimate even a medium severity vulnerability can still have a big impact.
That's a really good point. So just to recap, we've got a heap overflow, we've got a buffer underflow, we've got use after free, and multiple denial of service vulnerabilities, all on one platform. It really drives home the point that security, it's not a one-time thing. It's an ongoing battle, and no one's immune. So for our security-savvy audience, what's the key takeaway here?
I think the key takeaway is that you need layered security. Keep your systems patched, stay up to date on the latest threats, but also, think about implementing things like strong access controls, multi-factor authentication. Make sure your employees know how to spot a phishing email. And don't forget about threat hunting and incident response planning. It's about being proactive, thinking ahead, anticipating what those threats might be, and having a plan so you can respond quickly and effectively if something happens.
Great points. So for all you security professionals out there, remember, stay vigilant. These Zoom vulnerabilities, they're just one example of the challenges we face trying to secure this increasingly interconnected world. But here's something to think about. What does the fact that these vulnerabilities are so diverse, what does that tell us about how attackers are changing their tactics? And how can we as security professionals adapt our strategies so we can stay ahead in this constantly shifting landscape? That's something I want you to ponder as we wrap up this deep dive. Until next time, stay vigilant and stay secure.